Hey guys, what's up? I'm back with another YouTube video, and this week I was going to talk about why I don't think I'd go back to Amazon as a software engineer. So if you don't know my channel or you don't know me, I was a software engineer at Amazon for about 2 years, and since leaving about 3 months ago and joining Google, I reflected over my last 2 years and wanted to share a list of why I don't think I'd ever go back to Amazon as a software engineer and how it's different from a lot of big tech. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It helps with the algorithm and really gives me some feedback on what I'm doing well. If you have any comments or ideas on future videos, drop them in the comments if there's anything you want to hear from me. I'm a software engineer living in New York, and I like exploring the social scene and sort of doing finance stuff on the side. So let's get started and sort of talk about it. So first off, Amazon I would describe as an MBA's paradise. Typically, in my experience at Amazon, it's a great place for the shareholder and the person that owns the company, but it's not great for the individual contributor. And this seeps into a lot of the decision making they do and a lot of the deadlines they impose on people. Looking back in 2 years, it was a great learning experience, and great because it was a good looking into how the business is run, because I wouldn't consider Amazon a pure software company. It's more of a business company or an e-commerce company that has software. Of course, I wasn't in the AWS section, which might be more computer science heavy, but I was in the Prime sector, which was focused mostly on the business and add services to Prime, such as Prime Video. So the work-life balance at Amazon is the one that probably gets the most shit in the media, and something I can share my experiences on. And I would say that work-life balance is difficult when it is when there's a deadline. I think working at Amazon is very deadline dependent, and when things get close to the deadline, you will most likely work very late hours or nights in order to meet that deadline. Sometimes there's deadlines that can't get pushed back. Like, for example, if there's a major release that's promised to customers, or if there's a major deal in the works, then you will have to work very hard in order to meet those deadlines, because you can't push back a contract once it's signed without some repercussions. So one example is one project I work on was based on a business contract, and I had to deliver this feature on a certain day. So because of that, I was working later and harder than I would have otherwise. But when I'm not working on an a major project or a major release, the work-life balance isn't terrible. It's 9 to 5, sometimes 9 to 3 if you finish your work early. Depending on the team, you might be set up in sprints, or you might be set up in a system called Kanban. I haven't heard of waterfall being done at Amazon. I'm sure there's teams that do that, but overall, it's when a deadline comes up, it gets very intense and very deadline driven, and because of that, sometimes you might have to work late hours or weekends in order to meet those deadlines. But typically, it's 9 to 5, except for those crazy moments. And second of all, my second point is there's no free food and there's really bad benefits compared to peer companies. So one of the best things about working in tech is probably the free food, and Amazon has none of it, at least when I was there. Compared that to other companies such as Google and Facebook, this is definitely a lacking point, and one of the leadership principles that Amazon calls it, frugality, sort of pushes against free perks, as in free food, other nice things like snacks. You have to pay for most of your snacks in the office. This is very different than other tech companies, and it is really stingy. It was bordering on stingy in the spectrum. It's really sad. It's considering you're working for a big tech company, that you don't get paid as well in perks as your peers. Especially if you qualify for Amazon, you're most likely going to be able to qualify for working for someplace like Google and Facebook. It just seems like something that management gets away with in the name of frugality, which isn't good for the individual contributor. Even smaller tech companies, you will give 1 meal or 3 meals for free. Amazon gives none. in addition to free food, the benefits are generally worse. It almost feels a little predatory. Like for example, 401k matching takes 3 years to vest, and it's only 4% of your salary at 50%. So it ends up being around 2% of your salary. So you're getting a meager like 2 or 2.7k 401k match, which sounds good when you're not comparing it to anything, but peer companies like Microsoft, Facebook, and Google will match up to 10k if you're 401k, which is 10k free money, and they give it to you instantly. So when you compare yourself to other peer companies in the same realm, if you can interview for Amazon and get in, you'll most likely be able to interview for Microsoft or Facebook or Google and get in. And when you choose Amazon over those companies, you're giving up 10k in additional benefits that ends up making the comp a little bit less desirable. And in addition to that, it feels like you're paying for most things out of pocket. Like you will be paying for food when you're in the office, you'll be paying for snacks, you have to pay for coffee. And I think that Amazon has gotten better. Like they recently introduced HSA accounts, and they also introduced mega backdoor Roth IRAs to make it easier to save money. I think that compared to other big tech companies, like for example, like Google, their benefits, Google's benefits are worth about 22k, whereas Amazon's are only worth 8k. And that is something you have to factor into your compensation, because suddenly Amazon's offer is actually, the number that Amazon gives isn't actually what you're getting. There's some other benefits that other companies like Google or Facebook, Google and Meta might be giving you that Amazon doesn't include in on their page, on their contract, which makes them a little bit of misleading to work with. And on to my next point, it is difficult to switch teams within an Amazon. So working there is very team dependent. Like you might work on a project which has a great team and they don't have a lot of issues and not a lot of deadlines, which makes it a great place to work and very chill. Whereas sometimes you might be working for a team that has tons of issues and you will have to deal with a million problems that really eats away at your life. On-call becomes brutal, which is something I'll get to later, and just it makes a very, very unpleasant work experience. So once you get hired, it's very hard to switch teams within Amazon. You have to sometimes go through a full interview loop, which is 3 interviews, or you will have to talk to maybe do another interview or 2, and it's still not guaranteed. So once you join a team, you're just kind of stuck there for at least a year, and every team has a different hiring bar. They attempt to unify things using this thing called a bar raiser program. However, in my experience, like I've noticed vastly different standards amongst the teams that I've worked with. So I think that once you get into a team, you have to pick your team very carefully, because if you get into a bad team, it could make your life much worse than if you joined a good team. My next point is the compensation structure. So the compensation structure in Amazon uses this concept called total compensation targets, which is a system that sets your compensation at a certain point. So for example, once you interview, let's say your compensation is supposed to be 250K. And when you go below 250K, they will give you a base increase or like equity in order to compensate for that gap. So for example, if you drop to 225, then they'll give you 25K in order to bring you up. And the vice versa happens too. If like stocks go up, then and your total compensation target's at 275, then they will might not give you anything because they think that your compensation is above the range. So this is a system that makes it very makes performance reviews like sort of hit or miss. Sometimes like you might not get anything, which is very insulting, and sometimes they might bring your pay up to whatever your total compensation target is. This system is a little bit, I think, was very detrimental for me. I didn't like it because I think that it didn't really incentivize good performance, and I think that other peer companies such as Google and Meta give equity refreshers and also give you equity refreshers based on your performance. So for example, other companies might might give you like a 90K package on your third year, and based on how well you did in your performance review, they'll give you an additional multiplier, which is a lot more similar to like what I like, because I think that it gives me an incentive to work harder. In addition to that, other companies will give you an annual bonus, which I'm really sad Amazon doesn't do that, or didn't do that. So I think that overall the compensation structure is very favorable for the business, whereas not favorable for the individual. And I think that when you interview for Amazon, if you can get into Google, Facebook, Meta, and other companies. Like if you get into other companies, why would you wouldn't join Amazon? Their compensation structure just isn't very good comparatively. And it makes you feel worse as an individual contributor, because if you can get there, you could also get into other big companies which pays better and in a better way. This is something that is not, and the next point is something that isn't like specific to Amazon, but is general, like very big for big tech companies, but the difficulty of promotion is very hard in Amazon. You have to put together a huge promotion doc, which is a multi-page document that just outlines all your experiences and your responsibilities as an engineer, and you have to present that and hopefully get promoted. This is like a super tiring process, and most of the responsibility is on you instead of your manager. So doing promotions becomes like a very tiring thing and is not guaranteed. Ironically, the only way to get really higher pay is to get promoted. So there is no way of stacking refreshers as shown in other companies. So you would have to get promoted if you want a higher paycheck, which is a very grueling and tiring process. So this is my last point on the bads, and I think it's the on-call time as a software engineer. So typically for entry and mid-level software engineers, your on-call time is really expected and not paid. And depending on the team, it could be like really chill or also really grueling. So on-call is basically a day-long or a week-long process where you are on pager duty. So if anything breaks on your system, you have to jump on a computer and fix it. So basically say goodbye to your social life, say goodbye to like going out. You're gonna have to bring your computer everywhere, and you'll have to be ready within 5 to 15 minutes of a computer in order to jump on and fix an issue. So when you're paged, you could be paged during the day, or you could be paged at night. One time, like a couple times, I was on call and I got paged at 3 in the morning because there was an issue in India and I had to get up and fix it. And this just ties back to the whole work-life balance thing. It really drains you, and it makes that week very stressful. So you have to, it does mess with sleep cycles and makes your work-life balance generally worse. It is cool because you feel important, but at the same time, it's super draining. The really ironic part is, going back to the benefits thing, Amazon is very stingy, and they don't pay you for on-call. Places like Google pays you for additional on-call, which is a very nice perk. So for example, if you work like 160 hours on-call, you will get like 66% of your base, and that will be an additional paycheck on top of it. So generally, like Amazon will, it almost feels like Amazon will take advantage of their engineers and burn them out. And being an on-call is an example of this. Like other companies have SRE teams in order to fix most of the issues before they even call a suite. Amazon doesn't do that because it costs more money, and they're being frugal. So I think that they pass a lot of the responsibilities onto the suite. It makes the suite lives harder, in opposition of building a better work environment for their employees. So I feel like it wouldn't be fair to go through all the bads without going over some of the goods. And if you haven't, and one good thing is hitting the like and subscribe button. So if you haven't done that, please subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm. And hit the like button. It'll boost my video to more people that might want to see this. So going to the goods, the first good I think is it's a good learning experience. It's a very rough place, and it is trying to be the most similar thing to a startup. So if you're new in your career and you need to learn a lot of things quickly, I think Amazon's a good place to go to do that. I learned things like deployment, multi-region deployment, and industry standards tools, working with a larger team, debugging issues on the fly, on call, like grepping through log files to find what I'm looking for. So I think that there was a lot of good learning during my time there. However, it is a bit of a tech island, so there is a lot of Amazon specific tools. There are a few like industry standard tools like Git that I learned more in depth, or like Docker, but overall like a lot of the tools are internal. But there are opportunities to go beyond a role, and writing design docs is a way of doing that. So your goal as a software engineer really is to expand your scope and like how many things you manage. So when an opportunity comes up to do a design doc, it's really easy to just say to your manager, like, I want to do this, and it gives you an opportunity to grow and showcase what you can do. In addition to a good learning experience, is also you get to touch a lot of systems. Amazon's a microservice architecture, so there's thousands if not millions of different services, and a team usually will manage around 2 to 5 services. So in the larger ecosystem, if you need to make a change that affects more than one system, you'll have to go to the other team and write code and push it out. So this is typically required by an SDE2, which is a mid-level engineer, not really required for an SDE1. But when you do get the opportunity to do that, it will help you learn cross-team collaboration and working on a larger system and contributing to a whole, which is a great learning experience for any early engineer. My next point is the compensation is pretty good. Like I definitely think I might be a little disconnected, but overall, like we might be disconnected as software engineers, but in the grand market, like Amazon's compensation is really good. So to say their compensation is bad is very unfair. However, their compensation structure is a little bit misleading because most companies will give an equity grant that vests over 4 years. Amazon's is very backloaded, so they vest 5% the first year, 15% the second year, 40% the third year, and 40% the fourth year. Which makes your equity very backloaded, but they will compensate with a signing bonus your first 2 years that vests every paycheck. So you might get signing bonuses that range between like the 50 to like 200K range, depending on your total equity package, and they do that to hit that total compensation target amount. This is like very hard to plan your life around, because your first 2 years you will get a huge paycheck, like probably 2x what you normally get, and once you hit your third year it's going to fall off, because now you switch to the equity vesting, which vests every 6 months as opposed to every paycheck. So then you will have to readjust. You most likely will have to readjust your lifestyle after the third year, unless you plan ahead and really take that signing bonus and don't even rely on it. And I guess my last point is that it's very team dependent. So sometimes you might join a team where there's a million bugs, but sometimes you might join a team that's great and super high caliber. It is a bit risky, and it's kind of like a choose your own adventure game. It is fun for some people. For me, I don't think it was. I don't think that I like a place with a more unified hiring bar, whereas Amazon is more of like a team dependent hiring bar. So overall, I would say this is not really a straight good, it's more of a good and a bad, but take it as you will. I think some people really like working there, some people like me don't really like it, but it really depends on who you decide to work with. So that basically covers every point I wanted to talk about as why I won't go back to back to Amazon as a software engineer. I think it was a great place to learn for 2 years, and it really gave me my footings in the industry and sort of gave me a good brand name on my resume. But overall, like, I think that once you enter a bigger tech company, it makes less sense to go back to Amazon, because you get used to better perks, you get used to better work-life balance, a better overall company structure. So I think that Amazon is a great place to learn your first couple years, and maybe if you get like an enormous project later on. But I think that Amazon still is a better place for MBAs rather than SWEs. It is a business, it's not I wouldn't categorize it as a software company. I think that their main business is for the stakeholders, and as most companies are. So I think that that really shows in the way they treat their employees. It almost feels like as a software engineer you are disposable there, as opposed to other companies, which at least make you feel a little bit more like part of the team. I think that overall it was a great 2 years, but I don't think I'd ever go back. So with that, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, helps with the algorithm, and it really helps you, it helps me, motivate me to make more videos. So thanks for watching, and much love. Peace out, guys.